this meeting to order. This is the Breezy Point City Council, December 2nd, 2019. It's our regular meeting. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everybody. I see that everybody survived the Sunday snowstorm, and I just barely got shoveled out, so I think we're in good shape. First thing I'd like to do is to have Deb Erickson come up. She's from Crow Wing County. She's in charge of our elections this year, and she'll give us a presentation on the presidential primary that hasn't been held here in several years. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for letting me come before you this evening and share some information on the presidential nomination primary. This is a relatively new endeavor to the state of Minnesota after a significant hiatus, so we're trying to get as much information out to the citizens as possible because there are some differences between a presidential primary election versus a regular election. And this evening what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes of your time to kind of go over those differences and answer any questions that you might have as well. Mr. Wusso, if you could hit my next slide, please. The Minnesota has held a presidential primary previously 4 times in the history of the state. And as you can see, 1992 was the most recent time that it was held. It's interesting because in each of the prior instances, they held it one time, either repealed it immediately or left it on the books and bypassed it for a couple of times and then repealed it again at a later date. So every time that you see that it's been held here, this is 4 separate laws that were actually enforced at the time or enacted at the time to have that particular election. In 1992, the results were only binding on the Republican side of the ballot, which basically meant that on the DFL side, that it was a, quote, beauty contest where the delegates were encouraged to vote for the winners of the presidential primary, but were not bound to do so. The 2020 iteration of a presidential nomination primary is the result of the 2016 presidential caucuses in Minnesota. Previously, Minnesota had a caucus system, and there are several states across the nation that do have caucuses, and many that have primary or presidential primary systems. The difference between the two is in a presidential primary, it's like any other election. You go to the polls, you cast your ballot, you walk out and you leave. Get your little sticker, your duty is over. In a caucus setting, you go to the location of where the caucus is going to be. Candidates give their little stump speech. You hear platforms about what the party platform is going to be for that particular year. And all of the attendees at that location are all from the same party. So every party has their own location of where they caucus for that purpose. At a caucus, they'll often take a straw poll to determine what the results, if you will, are for president or some of the other offices that might be important on the ballot that year. But it's not a ballot system like we're used to with voting. In 2016, a lot of Minnesotans were wanting to have their voice heard about the presidential primary. There were several candidates that were running on both parties, and people wanted to have a voice in that particular circumstance. And the parties were not prepared for the turnout that the caucuses had. If you recall, there were news articles about, in some areas of the state, lines of traffic down freeways for miles, rooms that were not big enough for people to accommodate the number of people who showed up, the rooms that were no parking available for people to come there, not enough ballots for people to cast. So probably about a week after the caucuses in 2016, the legislature passed a new law to reestablish a presidential primary beginning in 2020. So basically what that law says is that Minnesota will participate in Super Tuesday. We will be one of the states that has a primary, a presidential primary. Patrick, if you can push up one more slide quickly, I'll show you a quick map. These are the states that have primaries or some type of a participation in what's called Super Tuesday, which is that first Tuesday in March. The states that are shaded in blue are the ones that will be participating on Super Tuesday in 2020. And Super Tuesday is often considered one of the earliest indicators of what the presidential race is going to be. The other part of the law basically says that voters are required to declare what their political party preference will be in order to be able to vote. And this is a big one, because this is not something that we as Minnesotans are used to when we go to vote on election day. Even if you're voting in a primary election, typically on election day, you'll be used to the election judges telling you that there's 2 columns on your ballot, you can only vote for candidates of one political party, don't cross party lines. We still don't know which party each voter is affiliating with, or which party they are voting. We just know that they are only voting for one column. The difference in a presidential primary is that you have to declare what party do you want, because you're only going to get a ballot that has the candidates for that particular political party. And this is something that I think a lot of Minnesotans will not be familiar with, and probably a little bit surprised when they go to the polls on election day, and the first thing the election judges ask them is, and which political party are you affiliating with this evening? It's still not party registration. It's still not saying that you have to be registered as X party in order to vote in a particular election, which some states do have. It's called a closed primary system in some states. In Minnesota, we have an open primary system, but the difference will be, in order to vote in this election, you will have to indicate what your political party preference is. And while that information is non-public data, according to law, there was some tweaking that was done in the last legislative session to make sure that that stays non-public data. It is going to be available, made available, and provided to all of the major political parties in Minnesota. There are now 4 major political parties in Minnesota. Following the 2018 election, every political party who gets at least 5% of the vote in a presidential or gubernatorial race or a statewide office declares or attains major party status in Minnesota. And after the 2018 general election, we had 2 additional parties who attained major party status. So all 4 political parties will get lists of every voter who voted in the primary election, along with which political party they chose. There will be a separate ballot for each of those 4 parties as well. And the other thing that the law required was that there had to be reimbursement to the counties and municipalities for conducting this election. Caucuses are a political party exercise. Political parties secure the location, create their own ballots, provide the manpower, do all the tallying. All the work that goes into a caucus is done by the political parties. Elections are different. Elections are administered by the counties and supported by the cities and townships. So when we've changed from a caucus system to an election system, there are a lot of costs that are associated at the county and municipal levels. For reference, it costs about $250,000 per election across Crow Wing County. $250,000 to $300,000 is the estimate of cost to run an election in Crow Wing County. So in 2020, we're now going to have 3 elections. We're going to have a March election, we're going to have an August election, and we're going to have a November election. And regardless of the number of candidates or the number of people who vote, it's going to cost close to $1 million to run elections in Crow Wing County for 2020. 2 slides up, please. Quickly, a couple of key dates. The political parties are the ones who are responsible for providing the names of candidates who will be on the ballot for March. You may have seen an article recently where the Republican Party had already certified what their ballot is going to be for the presidential primary. They certified that President Trump would be the only candidate that is on the Republican ballot. I did hear something the other day that they are considering the potential that there might be a write-in option as well, but we haven't seen anything official that's come of that as of yet. Between January and March, your election judges here in Breezy Point will be required to attain another hour of training. They have to have 1 additional hour of training that is specific to the presidential nomination primary. And just like any other election, absentee voting starts 45 days prior to each election. So absentee voting will start on January 17th. March 3rd is the presidential nomination primary, which means there can be no other public meetings held on that same evening between 6 and 8 p.m. And May 9th is a really important date because that's the last date that we have to submit for reimbursement. Reimbursement has to be requested from the Secretary of State's office, and it has to include original invoices of every expense that we are requesting. So we have to make sure that we have those submitted as quickly as possible following Election Day. We have 60 days after the election, after canvassing essentially, to submit for those requests, and the Secretary's office only has 30 days after that to get those requests reimbursed. So as I mentioned, there are now 4 major political parties in Minnesota. There is the Legal Marijuana Now Party, the Grassroots Legalized Cannabis Party, the Republican Party, and the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. Again, there will be 4 separate ballot styles. So even if nobody votes for one party in a particular precinct, that precinct still has to have ballots provided for them just in case somebody wants to vote on that particular office race. A couple of other differences with regard to the party choice. The party choice is private within the polling place. If you recall the last couple of times you've gone to vote, when you sign in at the roster table, the election judge has a little iPad in front of them. They ask you your information and it prints off a little slip that you sign the oath with. In this case, the judge will actually be turning that iPad around. There will be 4 check boxes, one with the name of each of the 4 political parties. You'll have to touch the iPad to indicate what your preference is going to be for that particular party or for that election. This is so that we don't have anybody sharing their political party data out loud. We don't want to have to put anybody into a position where they have to physically announce what that office is going to be or what that party preference is going to be. So having the voter themselves indicate it is very important. The other part is that once the little slip has been printed where the voter is going to sign, you can't change the party choice. So the voter is going to have to make sure that they're very accurate with which party choice they are choosing on the poll pad when they select that particular party. We talked about the reimbursement a little bit. The Secretary of State's office had asked all counties statewide to provide an estimate of what this was going to cost. The presidential primary is estimated to cost about $12 million statewide. And that's probably a little bit on the light side because like any first time thing, there's always going to be some costs that nobody has considered or thought of ahead of time. Basically, there are things that we think we have pretty much captured every particular cost, but there's always a possibility that something else could come up. So what we did was work with the Secretary's office to make sure that we could identify all the reimbursement items that could be possible. You'll see kind of a list of some of those things that we talked about that we know need to make sure that we can reimburse all of those things. Printing of ballots, postage, supplies, materials, coordinating and programming all of the equipment that's going to be needed, compensation for temp staff and overtime costs. Myself and my staff are not eligible to be reimbursed. Our time is not eligible to be reimbursed for this particular process. But if we have to hire temporary employees or if there is overtime that's incurred in our office, that can be reimbursed. The salaries that you pay your election judges, county canvassing board member compensation for mileage, and then that last one there, other expenses as approved by the Secretary of State. This was one that we pushed through with a more recent law change because we wanted to make sure that we captured things that were not considered in the first law. The first go round that was approved in early 2016 basically took the 1992 law and slapped it back into law. And we know things have changed since then. So this allowed a little bit more flexibility to work with the Secretary's office in the county to make sure that we were capturing what all those costs could be. As I mentioned, reimbursements have to be submitted to the Secretary of State's office with original invoices, and they have to be submitted by May 9th, and those must be paid by June 8th. The legislature has already appropriated the dollars that have to be used to reimburse those costs, so they are going to be paid, but it's just a matter of the timeliness of how everything gets done. From a city's perspective, what does this mean for you? Well, as a city council, a couple of things that we want you to consider is what does your emergency plan look like? A law that went into effect in 2016 required us to all have an emergency plan as it related to elections. And one of the things that we didn't really consider as part of our emergency plans at that time was what weather in early March would look like. We know that March weather in Minnesota can be somewhat unpredictable. Unlike township elections, there's no alternate date for the presidential nomination primary. So it will happen on March 3rd regardless of what happens. The purpose of the emergency plan, we want to make sure everybody's contact information is accurate in that plan as much as possible. And if for some reason a polling place became unavailable, what would be an alternate location as need be. Other things that need to be considered are there heating, plumbing issues, Some of our small townships still use town halls that have outhouses, and we want to make sure that they have heat and plumbing and things that are necessary on those particular days as well. The other issue that we have concerns about is election judges. A lot of our judges here in Crow Wing County are fortunate enough to be snowbirds. And that means that many of our people who you see in the polls on election day are going to be absent on March 3rd. So we are interested in picking up new election judges. If anybody has an interest in that, we're always interested in finding new election judges, but definitely for this election also. We're also a little bit concerned, or hearing some concerns from some of our judges, that they're a little bit afraid of the pushback that might be had from the voters when the judge is asking them to declare what their political preference is going to be, that there could be some pushback with regard to that also. So we also want to make sure that cities and townships are keeping track of all their costs and making sure that their reimbursements are timely. I know I whipped through that stuff in about as quick as I can talk, which is pretty fast, but I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. If you have questions or if you need more information, you can always feel free to contact my office, contact Patrick. They can always provide you with some additional information as well. And as you're meeting with your constituents and talking with the citizens of Breezy Point, I just would encourage you to share the information, ask if they have heard about the fact that there is going to be a presidential primary, and if they have any questions or concerns, have them contact us as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Deb? Gary?
No, sir. Well done.
Thank you.
Rebecca?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Gary?
No.
None. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You want to take some questions from the audience?
I can,
Okay.
if you are allowing it.
I will allow it.
Just curiosity, you brought it up a couple of times about pushback and whatever.
Yeah.
If you have a screen that turns around.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me,
Terry,
I'm sorry.
Terry, you want to come up to the
I'm sorry.
microphone?
Yeah, right.
State your name and address.
Yeah, Terry Palmer, 32156 Peony Lane, Breezy. In regard to you talking about pushback or whatever and not wanting to let a person's party affiliation be known beyond the screen that you put up here, why would there be a problem if the person that's standing on that side of the desk turns the thing around and states you just have to touch it, you don't have to speak the word? Why?
That's exactly what it's going, that's exactly how it's going to be. They will turn it around and tell them to touch which one that they choose. But because people aren't familiar with that
Right.
process,
How
that's
soon does that disappear before that person spins it back around again?
it doesn't disappear. It doesn't disappear. The judge will actually see that information.
That's what I'm getting at. The judge is bound not to walk around
Correct.
and go out for coffee and say, Joe Blow
That's
is this."
exactly right. So when I
I'm just curious, that's all.
You're exactly right, and that's a
Okay.
very valid point. Because this is non-public data, all voters will be given a Tennyson warning. That will also be part of the oath that they're signing. They're going to be given a Tennyson warning. And election judges will also be provided training that talks about exactly that purpose, that it is non-public data. They can't talk about it in the polling place or outside of the polling place either.
That's all I was getting at.
Yes, that's very valid.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor.
Our next item of business is the consent agenda. You have before you the council minutes from November 4th for the regular meeting. We have approval of claims totaling $381,514.17, which includes electronic checks 2438 Echo through 2439 Echo, and paper checks 135603 through 135643 and 135645 through 135663. We also have an authorization to sell excess equipment from the police department. They do from time to time have excess equipment that they can dispose of via Craigslist or any other means like that. And then we also have Resolution 1923 for setting fees for 2020. There's just a few small changes in that list, primarily dealing with like the rental for the hall. If people want to use electronic devices, that will require a little bit extra instruction on our part to teach people how to use it, so we've increased the fees for that. And then we have Resolution 1924, establishing polling places for 2020. I will need a motion to approve Resolution 1923 and 1924. So at this time, I will, if anybody has any objection, please let me know. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1923, setting the fees for 2020.
So moved as
Is
stated.
there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this? Anyone want further information? All those in favor of Resolution 1923, please say aye.
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 Yes.
It's actually one motion for all of the consent agenda.
Well, last time you said I needed a motion for the resolutions.
But that was for the whole consent agenda and the resolutions. This time there's two, it's just one motion.
Gotcha. Okay. So, correcting that, I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as written, which also approves the resolutions 1923 and 1924.
So moved
That
with
the way you
changes.
want it? Got it. Okay.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Michael?
None.
Gary? No. Rebecca? Gary?
No, sir.
All those in favor of the consent agenda as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Next item is the open forum. Anybody wishing to bring anything before the city council can come to the open forum. Please state your name and address for the record, and you can address the council. And I will have to say, if you do have things to talk about the 2020 budget, we are going to have a public hearing for that in the next item. So, anybody wishing to come before the council?
Chris Songo with WSB. We responded to the city engineering
Yes.
RFP here last month, so just wanted to take a quick minute here to just thank the council and staff and the roads committee for the invitation for that and review and all their time and effort put into that process. And also to apologize, I was not able to make the interview, so I had to send some replacements in my place, but I did see you got on the agenda to stick with WSN, and I completely understand that. So it makes sense. You not had any issues with them, so there's I guess not a lot of surprise for me on that. So, but anyway, again, just want to say thank you to everybody for their efforts and the consideration. So,
I'll have to say thank you for your interest in Breezy Point. Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else for open forum at this time? Yes.
My name's Rick Rudolph. I live at 30959 North Lakeview here in Breezy Point. I just wanted to say this past early morning Monday, I had the unfortunate responsibility of making a 911 call for my wife who was having a heart attack. But I wanted to say that the paramedics that responded, the first responders, did an outstanding job. They were there within minutes, saved her life. Airflighted her to St. Cloud, Joseph Garcia and Dan Satry. So, anyway,
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry to hear. How did your wife come out?
she's home.
That's good. Yeah.
Good.
Which is a
Yes.
really good thing. So anyway, but they did a wonderful job
Yes.
and deserve congratulations.
Yes. I've mentioned this multiple times that we have a terrific police force here with paramedics, on staff, and they can respond to an emergency within minutes. And it's these first 5 minutes, we call it the golden 5 minutes.
Yep.
They can get there in very, very short order, and they have saved a lot of lives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, Dan was at the front door, and I'm still talking to 911. So it
Yeah.
was that fast. So they were really good.
Thank you very much. Anybody else for open forum? Please.
My name's Dan Evans. I live County and I live at 31945 Harvest Road. That's the corner of Harvest and Bushman. And here to make a comment about truck traffic on Bushman. March through November, from dawn till dark. We think it's in excess and it's a nuisance. We have talked to the county assessor about it, and she said she hasn't heard anybody else complain about it. Actually, that's a city road, not a county road, is that correct?
That is correct.
At any rate, they go from like 5:30 in the morning, Monday through sometimes Saturday, until dark. Shake the house. I'm not saying we should shut down Anderson Brothers or move their pit or whatever, but is there, our taxes keep going up, it is a nuisance. Is there something that can be done to cut down some of this traffic? Put some limitations on it? And, on top of that, you have 4 trash haulers servicing the city of, 2,300? Way too much truck traffic. And with that, I'll shut up and sit down.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Gary Palmer, 32156 Peony Lane, Breezy Point. In regards to that, and now that you brought it up, there's a lot of those trucks that come off of there onto County 11 that don't stop at that stop sign. Just for you, there's a lot of them. Because I've seen them. Anyway, my question is regarding the taxes. I don't know if this is the right place at the right time, but 12.5% increase, is that what you've got proposed for my house tax? Is 12.5% from last year, and which means 33% in 2 years. My household real estate tax has gone up. City, 33% I think is a little bit ridiculous in 2 years. 12.5% may be a little bit ridiculous. In 1 year, your proposal last year was only $3 off, so I'm assuming this 12.5% is only going to be $3 off when you come up with a fixed number. But we moved up here, and the following year was X number of dollars, and since then it's gone up 33%. 2 years, 2 billing cycles, 19 and 20. I think that's still a bit ridiculous. I don't know where 33% of your real estate tax is going. If every one of these other people are paying 33% higher than they were 2 years ago, something needs to be looked at. Mathematically, just silly. Instead of COLA is only going up 1.8, that's all the percent increase we're going to get. Anybody, especially retirees up here, anybody else for a living, and you're going to raise it 2 years, 33%. That's wrong. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so I'll close the open forum now, and our next item is the 2020 budget. And I'll start out with Patrick to give us an overview on the budget.
All right, the first item that I've shown the council for the budget is the proposed resolution that ultimately will be required to be adopted at whatever number the city council comes up with. But it goes through the process that the city council uses. We start with the staff going through June and July. In August, the finance committee makes a recommendation. In that recommendation, the finance committee looked at 6%, and then that amounted to $122,000. And we'll go into the details how we got to those numbers. At the city council meeting on September 2nd, the city council, at the recommendation of the finance committee, looked at what we're calling the 2020 project funding. And I've got a better slide later to talk about that, and I'll go into more detail on that situation. There was a 3% cost of living, then also insurance rates went up. So that's the resolution that's before the city council. The next item I have for council is give the council an idea of where an individual's property is at. Left, Mr. Palmer did, but this takes the valuations that are assigned by the county assessor, works into the formula that has already been established by the state legislature, and then we take our tax capacity rate and calculates to what an expected home would pay for just the city portion of their taxes. Now, a gentleman just came to me before the meeting started and asked me about a commercial property, is about $1 million, and part of it, the reason that number isn't just for that one, it's at the bottom of the page, isn't double of the 500,000 is because the state has a different formula for the first 150,000 and has a higher rate for everything over that. And so that's why it wouldn't be an exact double the number in that type of situation. And I can go through that and show you the details, anybody that has a question on those specific numbers. But the idea here is what does this mean to a resident for city taxes? Now, we don't go into the counties, we don't go into the schools. This is just what the city's portion of the taxes would be on their tax statement. Finance Committee asked that I share with you, and this is the historical numbers that we look at. This is the 2019 proposed tax rate that's used for the formula. And get my handy dandy pen out. So you got Breezy Point right about here at 42 last year, compared to our neighbors. Pequot Lake at 57, Cross Lake down at 30, and then all the way up to Ironton, Crosby at the different rates for those communities. For 2020, we went from 42 to 46 for Breezy Point, this number right here. Some of the neighbors went up and some went down actually. Some had some levy limits, but based upon the dollars that the city council is asking, this is our proposed tax rate at 46.56. An example of the rate history for the last 11 cycles. You can see that it's been an ebb and flow type situation. This actually goes all the way back to 2010, where the numbers were at. And a part of this also, our tax rate comes from the market value. And so in 2010-11, we saw a lower market value, and now we're seeing increased market values. In addition, as I've shared with the council in the past, this city has been one of the higher home builders in the community, and so this year we're going to end up building 25 new homes. Consistently, there's been at least 15 to 20 homes built in Breezy Point, which is the highest single-family home builder city in Crow Wing County. Give you an idea where our 2020 operating expenses came from. This chart gives you an example of where the different percentages of funds come from, and it'll mean more as you go into the budget. And I should note to council members, we did have the written handout was available to the public for the general fund portion of the budget. But the big one at the bottom, public safety at 37% is highest, public works is next, administration and general government is after that. The rest fall into the smaller percentages, 5s, 4s, 2%. So this starts where we gave the residents the handout that's available to everyone. And I should note for everybody too, the Breezy Point City Council packet is available online, and the meeting is being tape recorded. So if you ever have any questions and want to go back to what the City Council talked about in September when they adopted the preliminary levy and they had an hour-long discussion, you can go to the city website, to the YouTube, and they will show you everything that was talked about at that meeting. So what we're specifically looking at here, important things to talk about are the projects for discussion. The City Council back in September looked at the Community Center feasibility report, expansion of the disc golf course, replace existing playground equipment, funding minimum maintenance road projects, continuation of the seal coating program, Bushman Road feasibility study, and a contingency project. Now of all those, the council narrowed it down to $216,000 after a great deal of discussion at the pros and cons of each of those different projects. Most of these projects have been talked about for several years. I understand the community center feasibility or building a community center has been a significant discussion for the city for many, many years.
Close to 20.
And part of it was the most recent comprehensive plan discussion talked about taking the next step. And so part of what we as staff have presented is the possibility of a feasibility report. Additionally, the disc golf course expansion, there's been great success. There was a tournament this year. The playground equipment is past its useful life expectancy. The different road projects we've identified here. And as part of our process, after the budget was preliminary adopted, the park committee reviewed the numbers, the road committees reviewed the numbers, and the staff worked on finalizing and fine-tuning some of the numbers. And with that, we were able to reduce levy for the general fund portion, $4,800 or $5,000. We are recommending that you actually keep that in there, and we would add that to the playground equipment, if that's the council's ultimate wishes. Because we still, to replace that playground is going to be more than the 120. This is a starting point for that. So with that, we go into the more detailed information, looks at how the revenues are generated for the city. 80% of our revenue comes from tax dollars. Another 116,000 is generated revenue from the police department. So it's not that they're just an expenditure. We have a contract with another city. We receive reimbursements for a variety of funds. And then another large increase is building permits, as we talked about earlier. As we get to the expenditures, we talk about the fact that for a community our size and almost all local government, salaries is one of our biggest expenses. We were able to negotiate a 3% union contract increase, taking into account to everything that has to play, and then there was a 7% health insurance increase, and that was budgeted throughout all the funds, all the operating funds, public, sewer, and debt service, no, it's not debt service, but the other operating funds. Some of the things we highlighted as important, we replaced both furnaces in the last 2 years. This year we're going to start working on the air conditioners, and then we've also identified $29,000 for a new digital sign. Part of that was, again, brought out in the comprehensive plan that the residents asked that we make a better effort to acknowledge where City Hall is and what's going on in different events. Prosecutions is staying the same as the previous years. Transferred other funds. This was the ones where we're looking at land acquisition, signs. We've got the Aussie Road project next year. That's where that comes from. And then accrued employee liabilities. Building inspector, talked about that a little bit. We did increase that number. Under public safety, numbers were pretty good for those issues on this page. Some of the capital outlays we're looking at for using the 401, which is some of the reserve funds. Under public works, we were not able to hire a part-time staff person last year. We're going to give that a try again. Hopefully they'll get some lawn mowing done. But other maintenance, we increased our budget for aggregate and blacktopping. The costs are just increasing and we're not able to catch up. Small increases to dust coating. Capital outlays, there's increases there. Our plan is for the next piece of equipment that'll be used for general fund dollars. It's a grader, right, Joe? Yep, thank you. You'll see later that we'll talk about a sewer jetter, but that comes out of the sewer operating fund. We are budgeting for about $250,000. We anticipate it being less for the White Birch Papago project that is coming out of reserves. And then on parks, we're looking at more specific dollars. We were able to increase the capital outlay to help with offset the new cost for parks, playground equipment. Then we go into the different line items. In general, I'm just going to page through this. I've highlighted most of the different things that we wanted to talk about for the general fund. This is our revenue page. I already hit on the points, primary points there. There's another revenue page with all departments. And we start getting into the different expenditures. City councils, $24,000, minor increase. Administration, you're looking at a dollar amount of $289 from $271 last year. Part of what the significant increase there was, we are including that City Hall sign. Legal fees have stayed the same. And we get to other general government. That was another one of the 12% numbers that you're looking at. Replaced the flooring at City Hall. It's not, the carpeting was determined to be less than 10 years old, but we're looking at the old little VCT tile that's in the kitchens, bathrooms, and the other two areas throughout City Hall. Front entryways tile won't be touched. We're still obtaining quotes. I haven't received the second one yet, but we believe it'll be a total of $12,000. In here, you also see that we have I budgeted just under $100,000 for the fire department. We haven't received the final number for that, but we do anticipate it being right about that number. It won't be going down from the current $95,000 budget. Talked about the other transfers. Planning and zoning, slight increases for planning and zoning, depending on how busy the year gets to be. Building inspector dollars are increased there. And a reminder, I think I wanted to correct this too for the finance committee, when I looked at the building permit contract, it's split 75, it's 50-50 for the building permit, 75-25 for plan review, mechanical, plumbing. Anything else that you might do is 75-25. So when you look at this number, there are some back houses that have not been received their certificate of occupancy, and there hasn't been some final inspections. That's why this number won't always equal to what the contract is issued. Then we get to the public safety, that $915,000 we talked about. Salaries is substantial there. Health insurance is another substantial. Then we're talking about replacement of a car, uniforms, pretty typical expenses that the city incurs. Public works, salaries is significant. Again, a portion of the salaries for the public works is split between this, public works, and sewer fund. The exact percentages I can get you if you'd like, but it's not 50-50. It depends on the employee. And I already talked about the increase to aggregate and blacktop materials. The 429 project, and then the Parks Department. General operations, we moved some of the insurances around, and so we saw for the first year we were charging insurance, property insurance for the playground. League of Minnesota Cities does separate that out, so we did break that down rather than have it under one department, but that was not a significant dollar increase, just a change in where you saw it charged out. And then you saw we were able to increase the capital outlay to $39,000, and that's $39,000 was above the preliminary dollar numbers that council looked at.
Okay.
These are the general fund numbers, and I have each of the different special funds. The 200 fund for EDA, where the city council already authorized increasing the contribution. And I can go through them all. I know the council, we've looked at it, the preliminary, and worked on it, and you've asked me questions the last 3 months, and so I won't go into it unless you want me to.
No. Okay. Any questions for Patrick at this time? Gary? No? Rebecca?
Just a note, when you were talking about with the 4,874 and that you said goes to parks,
That would be an additional to parks is what I'm
but
suggesting.
does it go to disc golf course? That's on the agenda.
The disc golf money, the playground money, I'm anticipating will all go in. If you approve that, the project funding, that will go to the capital dollars, and they will ultimately be transferred into the 401 account as one larger number.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where that 4,000 would also be added then too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, it all goes to parks.
Okay.
So yes, into parks.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Gary?
Yes, I remember discussing our automotive insurance or vehicle insurance went up considerably, and we were gonna look into that. Did we ever come up with any reason?
I think Kevin was gonna look into that a little bit more. Do you remember that, Kevin? I know we just had some discussions with the league.
It was just the way the league was charging us. They decided that they weren't charging us enough. They had to do with the fire departments as well. They decided they could charge them less and us more.
Okay. Michael?
No questions.
Okay. As Patrick mentioned, September we had a very lengthy discussion regarding the number of projects that we wanted to fund and not fund. And I would encourage people to go to the website to take a look at that. In addition, I did write an article for the Echo that was published back in September. It's been repeated on our Facebook page, and I would encourage people to go and look at that as well. It gives kind of the history as to how these projects came in, specifically how we funded some of these projects, partially funding them, and the whole intent and purpose is that it's my desire to basically to grow the city every year without taking on any debt. And this is essentially putting away some money, specifically like talking about the playground equipment. We're going to put away $60,000 now, $60,000 the next year, and then we can buy new park equipment without having to do any bonding and taking on any debt for that. And so, with that said, at this point, I will open up the public hearing for anybody that wishes to speak to the items of the budget, and we can listen to your whatever you have to say. So, anybody wishing to come forward for the public hearing, please do so now. Please state your name and address. Nobody? Okay, that's actually good news to hear. So, at this point, further discussion with City Council? Gary, anything? Anything new?
No, sir.
Rebecca, anything new?
No.
Okay. Gary?
Well, we had talked about the fact that the road situation had been neglected for a long time and
Yes.
passed over, and it's come to the point where something has to be done. The roads have to be, some of them have to be rebuilt. There's a lot, Bushman and some others, and so we have to address that because it's a fact of life. If you don't have roads, you've got a big problem. And so we're in the process of looking at that and working with it.
Okay. Michael, anything?
Nothing further to add.
Therefore, I will entertain a motion to adopt the 2020 budget as written.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Further discussion?
No.
Gary?
No.
Rebecca? Gary, no. Michael?
None.
All those in favor of approving the 2020 budget as written, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, the 2020 budget is approved. Next item is Mayor's report.
Mayor,
Yes.
that was Resolution 1925 you just adopted?
I didn't see it, but
It was at the very first item of the,
the very first page.
that's what that motion was. I'm
That
just
was,
clarifying.
indeed, I didn't see the resolution number. But that was at the very beginning.
I've got it on the screen right now.
There it is.
You want a
Okay,
re-motion
I missed that.
with that resolution number?
Just to clarify that that was
Just
the
to
motion.
just clarify that it's resolution 1925.
Yes.
moved. So second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good. We're legal. Next item is the mayor's report. And first thing I would like to do is to thank our public service group. All of those guys that were out plowing this weekend. They did an admirable job to get the streets cleared. On Sunday morning, it was downright nasty. And at least I had 16 inches in my driveway. And of course, I had about 4 feet after the plow went by, but that's another story altogether. Ran my snow blower probably for, several hours before I got all the driveways cleared out. So, a hearty well done to our guys running the plows.
Additional comment, if I may. Cliff Muller called from the airport, called me today and wanted me to express his gratitude for the efficiency that you guys do for that airport. Without that, we're in big trouble, so well done.
And that is just another follow-up. You know, the airport is very important to us, and we do contract. They pay us for plowing the runway. But having that airport there is very, very valuable for items like that come up where somebody has a heart attack and has to be airlifted away. We have this airport right here, and it can be, the pilots can come, land, and very quickly take off. So, I mean, it is a real plus. We are very fortunate not only to have the paramedics that we have here, but also to have the airport to facilitate, evacuations that we need.
Yes, sir.
Next item is TDS is, I don't know if they're really considering it, but we would like to see them expand the high-speed broadband internet service to Breezy Point, in fact, the entire area that TDS serves. So I did write a letter, and the letter is here, if anybody wants to read it, to request that the TDS Telecom provide high-speed fiber optic service to the Breezy Point area, which essentially would include from Landis-Gear through Eagle View School, the Breezy Point Resort, and the City Hall complex. Broadband is sorely needed, especially high-speed broadband, because there's more and more streaming services that are happening all the time, and it is just something that we need for not only just the city to grow, but for the business community to have that high-speed internet available. Council members, Gary Bakken, you have things to add about the Citizen of the Year follow-up.
I do, Mr. Mayor. You talked about a motion being made to officially recognize that entity. Is this the time and a place to do that, or you don't want to wait till spring?
Let's wait at least till January to get it
Okay,
get it
well,
finalized.
yeah,
And we'll get
make
that.
a note of that if you
Yep.
would, please, and we'll address it in
Yep.
January, because then I can make my phone calls. I spoke today with Pete Mose on the Echo, and they're all geared up. Nancy Vogt has been very, 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 very cooperative. She was involved in it some years back, and looking forward to Pete's very excited,
Okay.
the publisher, on that. The members consist of the mayor, Marcy Weaver, Diane Williams, David Spizo, of course the administrator sits in, and myself.
Kathy Millard.
And that's all I have.
Kathy Millard.
I'm sorry, I knew I missed. Oh God, Kathy, I'm in trouble.
Yes, you are, because she's going to
Don't
see this.
anybody tell her.
She's going to see this on YouTube.
Yeah, no. And I'm looking forward to its getting going again.
Yes.
It's very important. End of story. I have one other. I'll wait. Do you want to wait till we get down to the parks? Yeah.
Parks? Okay. Yes, you'll have a chance.
Yes, sir.
Rebecca, anything?
No, I don't have anything.
Gary?
No.
Michael?
I just had one item here on the agenda just for discussion's sake, and that's if and when legalization of marijuana comes, is do we want to be on the forefront of acknowledging where we stand with it as far as legalizing sales? A lot of things are still up in the air. It's not approved by the state. It's just a discussion point. Is this something that the council wants to be proactive on, or do we want to be more reactive on where we stand with that issue? Just more of a discussion and just kind of get the juices flowing. I'm looking for no official motion for tonight, just maybe some discussion or direction of where we want to go with that.
Okay. I can open it up to discussion at this time, and we can just have a quick comment. Would you care to comment on that, Mr.
Well,
Buchan?
I'm pretty much neutral until I know more about it.
Okay.
Pretty much neutral. However, you're all aware of the Alco deal going in Pine River. Are you not, or not aware of it?
That's for CBD oil.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a little different.
It's
but
a little,
that's-
I know, a little
yeah.
different, but that's done. It's a done deal.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we take an official stance on that or not. I really don't.
Rebecca? Anything?
Yeah, I agree with Gary. I'm very neutral on it. I haven't done enough research to see the impact on cities as far as crime or tax revenue or advantages, disadvantages. That would be the kind of the road that I would go down if this ever came to fruition, which I don't know that that's really coming anytime soon, but.
Gary, any comment?
Yeah, I'm against it.
No.
State of Colorado has had nothing but trouble since they brought it in. It affects drivers' abilities. It's not a good thing. It's just another drug, another way to get high, another way to take care of your troubles that you should take care of some other way. And so I'm very much against it.
Kind of the way I look at it is it might be a little bit premature at this point to do anything on it. It all depends on how the law gets passed, whether or not we could operate enact something that is more restrictive than what the state passes. So I think we just have to pretty much hold it in abeyance, keep it neutral at this point. So,
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
Additional comment, I'd like to direct a question to the chief. Your stance on it, I know if it's a law and you enforce that law, so I'd like to hear what you have to say.
I would not support recreational
I
use.
didn't think you would.
I think it's kind of ironic that we won't vaccinate our children, but we smoke a known carcinogen and call it organic.
Gary had a good point. You drive a car and you're stoned or whatever, that's not a good thing.
No.
End of story.
Patrick.
One of the things I think I talked to you and to Michael about was if the council was interested in taking up a position on this, we would have until I think it's November 3rd when the state legislature starts their second year of this session. Could make it known to our legislators if you're all vehemently opposed to that or individually opposed to it. And, they will share that with the opposing party that just seems to be in favor of it this time.
Yes. So that's kind of the way we'll go. Next item, committee reports. Road Committee. Joe, do you want to update us on the results of the RFP for the city
Actually, I think
engineer?
Michael was set to do that.
Oh, Michael?
Well, if Joe wanted to, he can, but I am more than happy to speak on it.
Okay, I didn't know.
I think
Okay.
Joe would like for you to do
Joe, do you want to? You want to take it over? You can fill in if I miss any blinks.
Okay.
The road committee met, and that consists of Mr. Mitchell, myself, Patrick, and Joe. We met with 4 different firms. All presented excellence. We don't doubt a single one could serve the city well. With our experience with WSN being a long-term tenure with us, we felt at this time there was no immediate need or action of change. So we are recommending proceeding forward with WSN with Mr. Duval as our contact. If anybody has any specific questions regarding the interview process, we sat down with them, we asked questions, they had a presentation. And again, each one of them could have served the city well. And again, the tenure spoke well with WSN. Keep it short and sweet, but answer any questions. Joe, do you want to fill in anything else? Okay, good.
Okay. Any questions of Michael?
None, good job.
Rebecca?
No, thanks.
Carrie?
Oh.
Okay. So at this point, based on the road committee recommendation, I will entertain a motion to retain WSN as the city's consulting engineer.
So move.
Second to that?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Gary?
None.
Rebecca?
No.
Gary? Michael?
None?
All those in favor of retaining WSN as the city consulting engineer, please say aye.
Aye.
Resolution is passed.
I'd like to thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, yes. And my understanding speaking to the microphone.
I'll learn that over there.
Okay. And speaking with, talking with the the road committee and with Patrick, all of the engineering firms put on a very good presentation. So, I mean, it was just, a matter of basically staying on the horse that we're riding on right now. So, appreciate the response from all of the engineering firms. Next item is a discussion on the cooperative road for the Bushman, Anderson, Ackerman, Nelson, that whole series of roads up there for the study.
Yes, again, that was something else. The road committee attended a meeting that Pequot Lakes hosted. In attendance was Jenkins, Ideal Township, and Pequot Lakes, as well as the Breezy Point. Also in attendance was Tim Hool with WSN, part of our contracting firm there. And we all agreed that the Bushman, Wild Acres, Nelson, Ackerson all need improvements. Breezy Point is there due to the fact that we have a large portion of that Bushman. And it was talked about jointly asking the county to participate in discussions in regards to those improvements. And this discussion would hopefully potentially lead to a potential of the county upgrading to county standards and turning into county road to connect County State Aid Highway 11 to 16. Making it a thoroughfare, offloading some traffic from County Road 11, getting it out of the town from a safety hazard, getting it away from the school to alleviate another safety hazard. And amongst us, we decided that a joint resolution that all boards now have in front of them to commit to this action and to have those further discussions with the county as a joint venture between those four communities. In the past, we've gone independently to the county, and this is an action now to show the county that we are very sincere about doing these upgrades to improve traffic, improve safety, and we want them to have a seat at that table and to listen to us and to partake in that discussion of what could be on those roads.
Okay.
Pat, anything?
Would just note the last time that this occurred in the county, my understanding was Fawn Lake Road, I believe, off of County Road 39, and that was a joint project with Breezy and
It would be
Cross
ideal.
Lake, if I recall.
Ideal admission as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have, my understanding, this is a common resolution that's being presented at all cities. Okay, our
Yeah.
resolution is 1926 to initiate the cooperative effort between the cities of Breezy Point, Pequot Lakes, townships of Ideal and Jenkins for the improvements to Wild Acres, Nelson, Bushman, Ackerson roads, all within Crow Wing County. So I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1926.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Gary?
Yes. Congratulations. I've been here a long time, and it's about time the people who are involved with that are taking those projects on. Sorely needed. And I wish the gentleman who left was here to send him that report, huh?
Yeah.
Bravo.
Rebecca,
It's about time.
No, I agree. That's a very important road. I mean, I live off of Bushman, so this is near and dear to my heart because I agree with the gentleman that was here before that that road needs to be improved and that it is a safety issue. So, yeah.
Okay. Gary?
Yeah, we're all aware of the truck traffic beating the road half to death, so it's in the discussion as to if there's some way to address that, and so we're working on it, just so the people are aware of that.
Mr. Mayor, are you alluding to perhaps getting Anderson Brothers involved in those discussions?
The people that are beating up the road.
That's exactly what I'm talking about,
Yes.
so forgive me for stepping on your toes, but they're crucial, and they need to know.
Right.
We're gonna be watching that stuff.
But as we work together, the four entities, I think
excellent.
We'll come up with something
Bravo.
and see what we can do.
And that is one reason why we do acknowledge that the various mining pits in the area are included with this motion, that they need to be well aware that we're talking and we know the cause of this.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. All those in favor of Resolution 1926, please say aye.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted. Parks. Gary, you had something to talk
Briefly.
about parks. Very briefly?
Very briefly, they run a tight ship. I'm impressed with all of those folks. And the one thing that was decided, that the dock will be replaced this spring. That's at the north access there. It's sorely needed. And the city is getting a discount because they're running it through Nisswa Dock. And thanks to the PLCC for their $10,000 contribution. Thank you. Amen. That's it.
Okay. Finance Committee. I suppose I can speak to that. Finance Committee met the other day, and we not only did review the final budget, but we also reviewed the RFP for the lots on Harvest Road, Bushman, Harvest Road, and Harvest Court that was being offered up on RFP. The lot is a city lot, essentially. Not really too sure how we acquired it. You have a picture there of where it's located. The lot itself, we did not really find that city had a good use for it. We did put it out for RFP in the manner that we have in the past. We did receive an RFP from the adjacent property owner, and it's from the James and Darla Carlo. We only received one bid. The proposed purchase price was $10,000, and the proposed use was for basically beautification. They want to clean up the down trees in that area, and they're proposing a timeline for 24 to 36 months. Finance Committee did discuss the purchase price and found that $10,000 would be an acceptable price to the Finance Committee, and we will bring it up to the City Council with a recommendation to accept the proposal, and we will take. I'll entertain. Let me start this way. I'll entertain a motion to accept the $10,000 proposal with the existing conditions, and then open it up to discussion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion. Gary, I'll start with you.
No, sir.
Okay. Rebecca?
No.
Gary? Michael?
Very fair offer, none.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the bid proposal from the James and Darla Carlo, please say aye.
Aye.
Who accepted? Patrick will make the appropriate legal things that have to happen. Where are we?
1927.
1920. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Okay, a resolution approving the plans and specifications for the project for the joint road project on Ossawinamakee and Graff Road and Sunset Strip. We just received like updated drawings from WSN. We did talk about this in the public hearing that we had the other day, or last month, regarding the that project, and we authorized the plans to generate the plans and specification, and you have the drawings before you. Joe, do you want to fill us in a little bit on these, if there's anything that we need to know?
Like you said, it's a joint project with
Correct.
Ideal Township and Crow County. We're asking to advertise for bids, yet Crow Wing County will be doing that. They follow the same process, so there shouldn't be an issue with enforcement. I have to check to make sure. I know Joe last week, after we went into design of 2 roads, limited design, but it was kind of determined that 20 foot wasn't going to work. That was the standard they were using, we discussed out there in the field and decided to go with the 16 with 1 foot shoulders. It's just so tight out there in Graff Road.
This is for Graff Road, right?
Graff and
Okay.
Sunset.
Yeah.
We did not do, we won't do plans for Osmowinity. They've already done it.
Okay.
And that's their, we'll just have to share in the cost of it. And those numbers will come when they bid. So this is January. I just would want to keep ahead of the process because after they bid, we'll have to come back and go through our process to make sure that we stay up with them if we're to go forward with the project after the bids are in. So I want to make sure we're staying ahead on that. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I did not put together an additional estimate from the last one, only because probably should be a little lower, and it's up to it's going to be up to Crow Wing County when they bid it. So.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions for Joe?
None.
Gary? Rebecca?
No.
Gary?
Well, the one thing I noticed on Sunset, where it comes back on I guess on the west end there, it's almost a blind spot from the top of that hill, cars coming the other way. And is there anything going to be done to try and make that a little more open so that nobody can go out and get hit?
Are you speaking of the west or the east side?
Yeah, on Sunset.
That'd be on page 3.
Pardon?
Page 3.
Yeah.
I know that you kind of come out and merge into it on the east side. It's, neither one of them come in perpendicular.
No, that's right. Well, when I drove it, I noticed when I got there, it seemed like Sunset got narrower towards the west side. Wasn't as well used, but I did notice that as that went out onto Ossey Road, that somebody coming from the opposite, from the left to right, west to east, if they were traveling at a fairly high rate of speed, it could be a bad situation. Now, remind me, Kevin, is there a speed limit on that road now, or is it?
Yeah, 35.
It is, okay. Which is good, as long as people will adhere to it.
Was that one? Oh, we didn't need to lower it, did we?
No, that was one we actually, that also when our Ideal wanted to raise it up from 50 to 35.
Oh, okay.
Michael, anything?
None, nothing.
Okay. Did I already ask for the, okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1927 to...
So moved.
So moved.
Second? Okay, your second.
Kind
Okay,
of hogged the party tonight.
yep.
The usual.
Resolution to approving the plans and specifications and ordering the advertisement of bids. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Also, the next thing we do have as part of the meeting packet, the last item is our 2020 calendar. So everybody, here it is. Take a look at it and make sure you write down on your calendar all the dates for the meetings because we really like to have people here looking at us. So,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.
I do have a question.
Michael.
When you
I didn't do it.